we doing this? Why are we spider women on the internet? Right? It's like, why put ourselves through all of this? For what? Right? And I obviously, there have been tears. There have been maybe not masks thrown, but other things, have happened when I've been cut off from the internet for whatever reason, for this thing. It's like, why are we here?
Yes.
Why put ourselves through this? You guys, you're going to have to figure this out. Maybe you'll tell us in the comments a little bit. Casey is saying, when women hear log off, they hear shut up. Yes. I understand the anger, but it was misplaced. Well, Casey, they were more angry at the limitations of their own nature. Yes, and I mean, we're trying to figure out what's like. Why are any of us here in this space, which is like the tennis court or like the fencing strip, somehow combative and emotionally challenging and trying and stressful, and it's just like it seems to bring out absolutely everything in us. Here we have the medieval spider woman. We also have the girls when they're on the web. Right?
Yeah, they're caught in there.
What are we doing here, guys? What are you doing here? And she's like, we can start from where we are as women, but what are we doing here? Why? I mean, the good porn. We're not talking about that, but the intensity of the engagement is clearly worth a lot of our life because we're in it a lot now. And something's happening for us that we're here that we need to understand.
Well, it helped me when I started to, when and where we first met helped me a lot because that was the beginning just before COVID had hit. And after the pandemic started, the ability for me to still have some way to sharpen my intellect and not be surrounded by a monotone of despair was really important. When I was in the chats, I got to play, I got to game. It was like, yes, it was killing time because obviously we were locked inside for a really long time. Like, I don't think people quite understand. I've done the equivalent of a prison sentence. There was a lot of time to kill. You and I would talk, and then I would do reading, and then I would come back and I would have an argument with somebody about something. And so I was constantly learning as I was going along because I was speaking to so many different kinds of people. So the more I would fight, the more I would have an understanding of a different topic, whatever it was, the topic of discussion, but also realizing different aspects of like my own knowledge, holes in my knowledge, but also playing with the psychology of the situation that I was in as well. So I got to kind of transform it into something playful and fun instead of a horrendous, pit of lockdown despair.
Brad Grease had another that's like vainglory, which is a little different from pride. His list was slightly different. He had 8, so they're spider-like.
That fits. Crawling with spiders. The web crawling with spiders. That fits.
The web crawling with the spiders of the 8 deadly thoughts.
That fits.
We're in this kind of city. It's this city of light and connection and audio visual and things like that. I mean, that's to a certain degree, the problems that we're having on the internet are the problems we have in society anyway. To be cut off is not just to be cut off from that one little game. It's to be cut off from the engagement with this whole new world that we are participating in.
Yeah, it's digital civilization. Yeah. And then there's the opposite of the civilization, which is the digital desert that surrounds it.
I was trying to get Gabby to give me something about, they're streamed intersands, right? It's like this feeling of, okay, so we're saying, why would we be on this internet? Okay, on the one hand, it's because it's a city and we're social and we like being social and girls make social things and therefore that makes sense. But on the other hand, we seem to go into this situation where we just end up crying or mean to each other. Why would we do this to ourselves? Why go out into the desert? Here's how I've got the desert, and it's nothing but shadows and shifting dunes and this series of images that this guy did of these camel shadows is really amazing. But I keep thinking of this. It's like this world that you can't even tell where the animals are, and the shadows are bigger than the real bodies, and as the camels walk across the dunes in the Sahara, you end up with no traces ever. I mean, this is also the feeling you can be on the internet of, one, it's forever because everything is digitally archived somewhere, and on the other hand, this constant feeling of it has no permanent effect. I mean, the things that people seem to not be transformed by or affected by, because they come and start talking about the same thing they did yesterday as if nothing never changes. There's a kind of Saharan like dune shifting eternity in it.
There is, and it gets very tribal very quickly. So it's very similar to the Sahara. People get very tribal very quickly, and you end up with tribal warfare in a digital sand dune, where people fighting to occupy a territory of ether, which is it's just very funny. But that is essentially the battle that everybody's raging when trying to establish a presence on the internet and then complaining about being deplatformed.
Yeah,
the shifting sands of this ethereal territory that has a kind of pseudo-permanence is very strange, and everybody's fighting for it.
This is exactly what we're talking about. We're talking about the way we live in this digital world. Conversely, the creepiness in this context is, no, this is where we are all the time. We live in this. I mean, it's sands because it's shifting and tribal but it's also sand because glass and electric.
Pieces of rock from the chip upwards.
Right.
The circuitry, everything. It's just earth that's been restructured. And sand remolded. It is glass. The city of the
city of sand, the city of glass.
Fiber optic cables made of glass.
All of it. So it's all sand. So whether we're using the sand, the city image or the desert image, they've blended. There's a little debate going on in my DCR, my Dragon Common Room, about the necessity of the cities for the countryside and vice versa. And it seems to be difficult to get across just for some of our members. These two things are intertwined, right? The degree to which the city creates the countryside and the degree to which the countryside is defined by the city. The city is defined by the countryside. That they are together, and this city in the desert glass sand image is exactly this problem of how are we to learn to live in the city when in fact what we're experiencing is this constant shiftingness.
Well, I think that's why women respond the way they respond online.
Okay.
To sudden changes, because women require the platform of a tribe to function, and so when the tribe changes, when the tribal dynamics change, the women freak out more than the men do, because the men are the ones that establish the tribal dynamics in the sense of the strength of it. The behavior of women on the internet, women needing to establish the status that they have in particular areas, in particular environments, and then at all costs avoiding saying anything that would rock the boat and disturb the tribal dynamics of wherever they are. They don't want to be deplatformed. Most women don't want to be deplatformed. They actively avoid it. Whereas the guys are out in that combative way, constantly looking around for new territory to move into and to explore, and they're kind of expanding their operations. It's just two different ways of looking at using the same technology.
Yes, and the women, we've seen this in the chats too, the Telegram chats, the women get very possessive. We are allowed to possess our own chats because there are salon, and hers is different from mine. Although we have a lot of overlap of people, they come and go, and some hang out at the diner, and then some come to the DCR. But the women taking over men's chats, which is of course the reason that Milo was writing the women should just log off, because women were moving into the men's spaces and then trying to treat them as theirs. It's interesting because I think it's like in the intersection between the men are wanting one thing and the women are wanting another, but the women also seem to want to take over the men's and take over what they were doing, and the being upset when the men behave like men in their situations, which again was the Gamergate problem and the thing that Milo was writing about. We witnessed this too, the women taking over chats that they changed the character of everything because they stifle the men's interactions and change the fights too.
Well, they want to reduce conflict.
The women do, yes.
And then by reducing conflict, they're interfering with the men's work because men work well in conflict.
Right.
It's healthy for them. It's good for them. Men who are deprived of conflict end up retarded.
Well, they don't train.
They don't have any.
They don't go and test their skills against each other. And that's, I mean, with the fencing thing is like the men have to bout to get those skills. You can't have your mom or your wife sitting on the side of that bout. Don't get hurt.
No.
Or conversely, right? The men are in a bout, and this is a problem. It's like the parents and coaches always have to be like corralled and controlled at the tournaments, because the parents will start trying to play the bout for the kids. Right, fencing parents are a problem of themselves. Fencing it's a good sport because you've got, you know, in the same tournament from 10-year-olds up to 80-year-olds now, because we're a small sport, so you can have these national tournaments that are lots of different events and layers, and so you see all of this, right? And it's very, very hard for the parents just to let their kids do the and some coaches have that problem too, that they start like puppeting their students, their athletes, and telling them what moves to make next. And it's like, if you have someone puppeting you, you never learn how to deal with the situation.
There's no training then. It's not training.
Right.
That's a student on autopilot. Well, I'm thinking then in the sense that the fencing mums, what they're doing then is preventing real training from happening. Right. Which is what Milo said that the girls were doing to the boys on the internet.
I mean, I did a little cartoon about this called Lobster Side, which has, I mean, it was in the Google memo about the way gender differences were affecting things. And I was thinking about how, like, women like me go in and want to do the men's thing, like you two, now that we all know you're a woman. And we do actually want to play by their rules, although I recognize that even wanting to play by their rules, I still default to women's moves sometimes. Please don't hit me so hard, I'm a girl. And then once women are in there, other women can come in, and once the balance of people shifts to more women than men, the whole character of the game is completely changed. It's no longer the skills structure game, it's the social game that women play. And women's games are inclusive, they're about being polite, they're so on, right? They're like behavior. It's how do you behave well at the party. Whereas men's games are different. And I have no idea what men's games are actually like, because if I'm there, the dynamics has changed already. It's like you can't even observe it properly because your very presence shifts the whole situation. Guys, we don't expect you to tell us, because why would you? You should have it should be like in the American Southwest, the Anasazi, the older Pueblo people. The men had kivas, right, where only the men get to go, and they do men things in there. And if the women spy on them, they should, they get killed as witches or something, because you shouldn't be watching, ladies. The men do their men thing, and the women do our thing, and the men don't want to do our thing anyways. They don't even care what we talk about. We established that last week. But the women, we're always curious, right? We always want to be in there seeing what the guys are up to, because it does matter to us. It has a big effect on their choices, but it disrupts and destroys their training if we do that.
I think that's the main danger, and that's probably why they had those rules, like tribal societies that had men's spaces and women's spaces. And the reason why, I mean, even in our church, I've said this before, but our liturgy, I can't even sit with the men. We have to sit on the right-hand side. The men are on the left, and you never go near the men's side during liturgy. It's just not done. But it is the training. It's the interruption of the training of men, because men are engineered. They're built. Women are not. Women just are. The discussion was between two people texting each other. There were a couple, and the girl's complaining, I want you to change and do better. And he's like, yeah, okay, I will, but then you have to do it too. And she goes, if you won't accept me as I am, where the relationship's over, right? So obviously the person who's posted is complaining that women are entitled. I think it's much more important for men to understand, or women to understand, that the process of men becoming men is a process of engineering, and men engineering each other. Women are not built the same way. We're not forged in competitional pressures in the same way that men have to be in order to find ourselves and to be able to lead families and to establish a patriarchy. That's why I don't think women are engineered that way. We have our social games that engineer us, but men, they need to be hit in order to grow.